The gunshot that killed Adam Lawson's parents echoed through his nightmares for 7 years, and on this scorching August day in 1878, as he rode into White Pine, Nevada, he could still hear it reverberating in his skull like a curse that refused to lift. Adam was 11 when the raiders came. They wore no uniforms, no identifying marks, just hungry faces and desperate eyes that gleamed in the firelight as they torched the small ranch his father had built from nothing. His mother had hidden him in the root cellar, her last words a whispered command to stay silent no matter what he heard. He obeyed, even as the screams pierced the night air, even as the smell of smoke filled his lungs, even as the world above him collapsed into ash and silence. When he emerged at dawn, he was alone in a way that carved something fundamental out of his chest. The neighbors found him 3 days later, still sitting between the charred remains of what used to be his home, staring at nothing. Now at 18, Adam had finally saved enough from ranch work across 3 territories to buy his own piece of land. White Pine was supposed to be his fresh start, a place where nobody knew the hollow-eyed boy who had lost everything. The town sprawled before him in the desert heat, all weathered wood and sun-bleached paint, with the distant mountains standing guard like ancient sentinels. He guided his horse toward the general store, his saddlebags heavy with the few possessions he owned and the deed to 40 acres just outside town. The store was blessedly cool inside, shadows providing relief from the relentless sun. Adam was studying a display of farming tools when he heard the crash. A young woman had dropped a sack of flour, white powder exploding across the floorboards in a cloud. She stood frozen, staring at the mess with an expression that went beyond simple embarrassment. Her hands trembled as she knelt to salvage what she could, and something about the desperate precision of her movements made Adam's chest tighten with recognition. "I am so sorry, Mr. Calhoun," she said to the shopkeeper, her voice thin and stretched like a wire about to snap. "I will pay for it, I promise. I just need a few more days at the boarding house and I can work extra hours and, Emma, we have talked about this," the shopkeeper interrupted, not unkindly but with the weariness of someone who had repeated himself too many times. "You are working yourself to the bone already. I cannot keep extending credit." Adam found himself moving forward before his mind caught up with his body. "I will take that flour," he said, "and whatever else the lady was planning to purchase." Emma Nelson looked up at him with eyes the color of sage in spring, wide with surprise, and something that might have been mortification. She was perhaps 16 or 17, with dark hair pinned back in a practical bun, and a dress that had been mended so many times it was more repair than original fabric. But it was the expression on her face that stopped Adam cold, that particular blend of pride and desperation that he saw in his own reflection every morning. "I cannot accept charity," she said, her jaw setting in a way that suggested she had said those words often and meant them every time. "Not charity," Adam replied. "I am new in town, and I figure making a friend on my first day is worth the price of some flour. Besides, I could use some advice about the area. Maybe you could tell me about White Pine while I buy supplies." He could see her weighing it, calculating whether accepting help would cost her more than refusing it. Finally, she nodded once, sharp and businesslike. "I can do that, but I will find a way to repay you." As Mr. Calhoun tallied Adam's purchases and added Emma's meager list to it, she told him about the town in a voice that gradually steadied. White Pine had boomed with silver mining but was starting to settle into something more permanent. The boarding house where she worked belonged to Mrs. Fletcher, a widow who was fair but could not afford to keep staff who could not pay their rent. Emma had arrived in White Pine 6 months ago with nothing but the clothes on her back and a grief so fresh it still bled. Adam did not ask what had happened. He recognized the careful way she avoided certain topics, the same way he steered conversations away from his own past. They were both orbiting around holes in their histories too painful to examine directly. Over the following weeks, Adam threw himself into building his ranch. The land was tough and unforgiving, but he had learned how to coax life from reluctant soil. He built a small cabin, installed fencing, and purchased a few head of cattle with the last of his savings. It was back-breaking work that left him exhausted enough to sleep without dreaming most nights. But he found himself riding into town more often than strictly necessary, usually finding reasons to stop by the general store or the boarding house. Emma was always working. She cleaned rooms, served meals, mended linens, and took in laundry from the miners who had more silver than time. Adam started hiring her to do his wash, even though he barely had enough shirts to make it worth the trip. She would meet him on the boarding house porch, handing over his clean clothes with an efficiency that felt like armor. "You do not have to keep inventing reasons to check on me," she said one September evening, her directness catching him off guard. "I am managing." "I know you are," Adam said. "But maybe I enjoy the company." Something flickered across her face, too quick to name. "Company is dangerous, it makes you soft. Or maybe it makes you strong enough to keep going." She looked at him for a long moment, and he could see her deciding something. "Walk with me," she said finally. "If you are going to keep showing up, you might as well know why I am the way I am." They walked out past the edge of town where the desert opened up wide and endless. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of copper and gold. Emma was quiet for so long Adam thought she might have changed her mind. Then she started talking. "I was 8 when the fever came through our town in Missouri," she said. "My father died first, then my little brother Thomas. He was only 5. My mother held on for 3 more days, long enough to tell me she loved me and that I needed to be brave." Her voice was flat, recounting facts rather than feelings. "The neighbors took me in, but they had 6 children of their own and barely enough food. I stayed until I was 16, working to earn my keep, but I knew I was a burden, so I left. Took what little I had saved and bought passage west, figuring I could start over where nobody knew me as the orphan girl." Adam's throat felt tight. "How long ago did you lose them?" 9 years last month. You would think it would hurt less by now, but some mornings I wake up and forget they are gone. Just for a second, I think I am back in our little house and I can smell my mother's bread baking. Then I remember, and it is like losing them all over again." He understood that particular torture, the way grief could ambush you in quiet moments. "I was 11, he said, the words emerging rough and unpracticed. He had not spoken about this to anyone in 7 years. "Raiders attacked our ranch. My mother hid me in the cellar. I heard everything. The gunshots, the fire, all of it. By morning they were gone, and so was everything else." Emma stopped walking and turned to face him fully. In the dying light, her eyes were luminous with unshed tears. "You were alone for 7 years. Neighbors took me in, different families, but I never stayed long anywhere. Felt like a ghost haunting other people's lives. Started working ranches when I was 13, saved every penny to buy my own place. Thought if I could build something new, maybe I could stop feeling like that 11-year-old boy in the cellar." "Has it worked?" she asked quietly. "I do not know yet," he admitted. "Some days I think the building is the only thing keeping me from falling apart. But other days it feels like I am just putting walls around emptiness." She reached out then, her hand finding his in the growing darkness. Her palm was rough with calluses, her grip sure and warm. "I know that feeling," she said. I keep working because if I stop, I will have to think about how alone I am. How I do not have anyone who remembers my family, who could tell me if I am remembering my mother's voice right or if I am starting to forget. They stood there holding hands while the stars emerged overhead, two people who had survived the unsurvivable but had not yet figured out how to live again. Adam felt something shift in his chest, a painful unfurling like roots breaking through stone. "We remember," he said. "You and me. We remember what it costs and what it feels like. Maybe that is worth something." Emma's fingers tightened around his. "Maybe," she whispered. After that night, their orbits drew closer. Adam found himself riding into town not with excuses but with honest invitations. Would Emma like to see his ranch? Did she have a free afternoon to go riding? The answer was rarely yes. She worked too many hours to afford much free time, but when she could spare a few moments, they spent them together. He learned that she had a sharp sense of humor beneath her serious exterior, that she could identify birds by their calls, that she had taught herself to read from newspapers left behind at the boarding house. She learned that he had a steady patience with animals, that he hummed old songs his mother had taught him while he worked, that he was building his ranch with a fierce determination that bordered on obsession. "Why cattle?" she asked one October afternoon. She had finally accepted his invitation to visit his property, and they were sitting on the porch of his small cabin watching his small herd graze in the distance. "My father always wanted to expand beyond horses," Adam said. "He had plans, dreams about what the ranch could become. I guess I am trying to build what he never got the chance to finish." "You think he would be proud?" The question hit him unexpectedly hard. "I hope so. But sometimes I wonder if I am doing this for him or because I do not know what else to do with myself. Like if I stop moving forward, I will get stuck in that day and never get out." Emma was quiet, her gaze distant. "My mother used to sing while she cooked. Not well, but she did not care. She sang anyway. I have not sung since she died. It feels like if I did, I would be leaving her behind somehow, living a life she is not part of." "Or maybe you would be taking her with you," Adam said, "keeping something of her alive." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw recognition in her eyes. They were both trying so hard to honor their dead that they had forgotten how to honor their own lives. The realization sat between them, heavy and undeniable. "I am afraid," Emma said suddenly, "of letting myself be happy, because what if I lose it again? What if I build something and it gets taken away?" "We already lost everything," Adam replied. "We know how to survive that. Maybe the brave thing now is to risk building something anyway." "When did you get so wise?" she asked, a small smile tugging at her lips. "About 5 seconds before I said it. I am figuring this out same as you." She laughed then, a real laugh that sounded rusty from disuse. The sound of it did something to Adam's heart, made it beat in a way it had not since he was 11 years old. He was falling in love with her, he realized. With her strength and her honesty, with the way she understood the weight he carried because she bore the same burden. But love was terrifying when you had already lost so much. As autumn deepened, they continued to circle each other, drawn together by shared understanding but held apart by shared fear. Adam worked on his ranch with renewed purpose, but now he was building with a future in mind that included more than just himself. Emma continued her exhausting schedule at the boarding house, but she started taking Sunday afternoons off to spend with Adam. Those afternoons became sacred. They would ride out into the desert, exploring the landscape and each other's histories. Emma told him about her brother Thomas, who had loved frogs and always had muddy knees. Adam told her about his mother's garden, how she could make anything grow. They shared memories like precious stones, polishing them with the telling until they shone again with something other than pain. "Do you ever get angry?" Emma asked one November day. They were sitting by a stream watching the water flow over smooth stones. "About what was taken from you. Every day," Adam said. "But I do not know what to do with the anger. The men who killed my parents are long gone. There is no justice to be had, no revenge that would bring them back. So I just carry it around and try not to let it poison everything." "I used to be so angry at God," Emma said, "for taking my family, for leaving me alone. But then I realized God did not do what fever did, same as it has done to thousands of other families. There is no reason, no grand plan, just bad luck and biology. Somehow that is harder to accept than divine cruelty. At least cruelty has intention. So what do we do with it? The anger, the grief, all of it." Emma picked up a smooth stone from the stream bed, turning it over in her hands. "I think we learn to carry it differently. Not as a weight dragging us down, but as evidence that we loved people worth grieving for, that we had something real that mattered." Adam felt something release in his chest, a knot he had been carrying for 7 years loosening just slightly. "I like that," he said. "It makes it feel less like a curse and more like a testament." "We are testaments," Emma said, "living proof that they existed and were loved." The words hung in the air between them, profound in their simplicity. Adam reached for her hand, and this time when their fingers intertwined, it felt less like two drowning people grabbing for purchase and more like a conscious choice to hold on. "Emma," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I know we are both scared. I know we have both lost too much, and that building something new feels like tempting fate. But I am falling in love with you, and I think maybe you feel the same way, and I cannot keep pretending that these Sunday afternoons are enough." Her breath caught, her eyes searching his face. "I do feel the same way," she admitted. "It terrifies me. Every time I let myself care about you more, I hear this voice in my head warning me that it will be taken away. That I will end up alone again, and this time it will hurt even worse because I will have chosen it." "What if we choose it anyway?" Adam asked. "What if we decide that even with the fear, even with the risk, it is worth it to love someone and be loved in return?" Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks, but she was smiling. "You are asking me to be brave. I am asking us both to be brave, together." She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and tentative at first, then with growing certainty. It was a kiss that tasted of salt and hope, of grief acknowledged and deliberately set aside to make room for something new. When they pulled apart, Emma was crying in earnest, but her face was transformed with something that looked like joy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I want to try. I want to be brave with you." The winter of 1878 into 1879 was one of the coldest on record in Nevada, but Adam and Emma barely noticed. They were too busy building a life together, brick by careful brick. Emma moved out of the boarding house and into Adam's cabin in December, causing a minor scandal that they weathered with matching determination. Mrs. Fletcher was surprisingly supportive, even throwing Emma a small celebration before she left. "You have earned some happiness, girl," the widow said, pressing a set of embroidered handkerchiefs into Emma's hands. "Do not be afraid of it." Living together brought its own challenges. They were both used to solitude, to managing their pain privately. Now they had to learn to share space, to navigate each other's difficult days and triggered memories. There were nights when Adam woke gasping from nightmares of fire and gunshots, and Emma would hold him until the shaking stopped. There were days when Emma would grow quiet and distant, lost in memories of her family, and Adam would sit beside her in patient silence until she was ready to return. "I feel like we are learning a new language," Emma said one January evening. They were cooking dinner together, moving around each other in the small kitchen with increasing familiarity. The language of not being alone. Is it a language you want to keep learning? Adam asked, though his heart was in his throat with the asking. Every day, she replied, turning to look at him with those sage green eyes that had become his anchor. Some days are harder than others, but yes, every single day. In February, Adam asked Emma to marry him. There was no ring, yet he was saving for one, but he could not wait any longer to make his intentions clear. They were sitting by the fire after a long day of work, Emma mending one of his shirts while Adam carved a piece of wood into what might eventually become a cup. "Marry me," he said abruptly, the words tumbling out without preamble. Emma looked up, her needle suspended mid-stitch. "What? Marry me," he repeated, setting down his carving to take her hands. "I know we are young. I know we have only known each other 6 months. But I also know that you are the only person who understands what I have survived, and that I want to spend the rest of my life being brave enough to love you. Marry me, Emma. Build this life with me." She set aside her mending carefully, as if moving too fast might shatter the moment. "We are both broken," she said, but her voice was wondering rather than doubtful. "Then we will be broken together until we are not any more. Until we have healed enough that the cracks are just scars and not open wounds. Please, Emma, say yes." "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, with growing confidence, "Yes, Adam. I will marry you. I will be brave enough to build a life with you." They married in March of 1879 in White Pine's small church, with half the town in attendance. Emma wore a simple dress that Mrs. Fletcher had helped her sew, with lace from the general store that Mr. Calhoun sold to them at cost. Adam wore new clothes purchased for the occasion, his hair neatly trimmed and his face clean-shaven. But the real transformation was in their eyes. The hollow, haunted look had begun to fade, replaced by something that resembled hope. The ceremony was brief, but profound. When the preacher asked if they took each other in sickness and health, for better or worse, Adam and Emma answered with the full weight of people who knew exactly how bad worse could be, and were choosing each other anyway. "I do," Adam said, his voice steady and sure. "I do," Emma echoed, tears streaming down her face. When they kissed as husband and wife, it felt like a promise being kept not to forget the past, but to honor it by living fully in the present. Their first year of marriage was not easy. The ranch demanded constant work and money was tight. There were days when they survived on beans and whatever game Adam could hunt. There were nights when old grief would rise up and threaten to drown them both. But they faced it together, learning slowly how to be partners rather than just survivors. Emma proved to have a gift for managing the ranch's finances, stretching every penny until it begged for mercy. Adam discovered that having someone to build for gave his work new meaning. He was not just honoring his father's memory anymore, but creating something for Emma and whatever future they could claim together. In the summer of 1879, Emma announced she was pregnant. Adam's initial joy was immediately complicated by terror. What if something went wrong? What if he lost her the way he had lost everyone else? Emma saw the fear in his eyes and took his face in her hands. "I am scared too," she said firmly, "but we cannot let fear make our decisions. We have to trust that we are strong enough to face whatever comes." "I cannot lose you," Adam said, his voice breaking. "Emma, I cannot." "You will not," she promised, though they both knew it was a promise she could not guarantee. "I am healthy and strong, and Doc Morrison says everything looks good. We are going to have a baby, Adam. A child who will grow up knowing they are loved and wanted. That is worth being scared for." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Adam hovered like an anxious shadow. He insisted Emma rest more, take on less physical work. She tolerated his concern with good humor, understanding that his protectiveness came from a place of deep love and deeper fear. "I am not made of glass," she would remind him gently when he fussed too much. "I know," he would reply. "But you are precious, and I am allowed to treat you that way." Their child was born in early spring of 1880, a healthy baby boy with Adam's dark hair and Emma's green eyes. They named him Thomas James Thomas for Emma's lost brother, James for Adam's father. When Doc Morrison placed the squalling infant in Adam's arms, something fundamental shifted in his understanding of the world. "Hello, Thomas," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "We have been waiting for you." Emma, exhausted but glowing, reached for them both. "We are a family," she said wonderingly. "An actual family." The weight of those words was almost overwhelming. They had both lost their families so young, had spent years feeling like orphans adrift in the world. Now they had created something new, something that was entirely theirs. It felt like reclaiming territory that grief had stolen. Parenthood brought new challenges and new joys. Thomas was a demanding baby, colicky and loud, but Adam and Emma approached caring for him with the same determination they brought to everything else. They took turns walking him at night, sang him the songs their parents had sung to them, told him stories about the grandparents he would never meet. "Your grandmother would have loved you," Emma would say, rocking Thomas by the fire. "She always wanted more children. She would have spoiled you absolutely rotten." "Your grandfather was the best horseman in 3 counties, Adam would add, holding Thomas up to see the ranch. "Someday I will teach you to ride like he taught me." In speaking of their lost families to their son, Adam and Emma found a new way to keep those memories alive. The grief did not disappear, but it transformed into something gentler, something that could coexist with happiness. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, the ranch grew too. Adam's careful management and Emma's financial acumen paid off, allowing them to expand their herd and hire occasional help. White Pine continued to develop, becoming more stable and prosperous. The Lawsons became respected members of the community, known for their hard work and quiet generosity. But the real transformation was internal. Adam found that he could think about his parents without being overwhelmed by the memory of their deaths. He could remember happy moments, his mother's laugh, his father's patient teaching without drowning in loss. Emma discovered that she could sing again, her voice filling the cabin with the same songs her mother had sung. The first time Adam heard her, he cried. "She would be so proud of you," he said, pulling Emma into his arms while Thomas played at their feet. "Your whole family would be." "Yours too," Emma replied. "You built something from nothing, Adam. You survived and then you thrived. That takes incredible strength." They were healing slowly but surely. The wounds would always be there. Some losses were too profound to ever fully overcome, but they were learning to live with the scars. More than that, they were learning to be happy despite them, to claim joy as their birthright rather than something they did not deserve. In the fall of 1882, Emma gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah Rose Sarah for Adam's mother, Rose because Emma insisted every little girl should have a flower name. Thomas, now 2.5, was fascinated by his tiny sister, constantly wanting to help care for her. "Gentle," Adam would remind him, guiding Thomas's small hand to carefully touch Sarah's downy head. "She is very little." "Little," Thomas would repeat solemnly, his face serious with responsibility. Watching his children together, seeing Thomas's protective instincts already emerging, Adam felt a profound sense of peace. This was what surviving meant, not just enduring, but building something beautiful from the ruins. He and Emma had taken their broken pieces and created a family, a home, a future. One evening in 1883, after the children were asleep, Adam and Emma sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the Nevada sky in brilliant colors. The ranch sprawled before them, no longer a desperate dream but a thriving reality. Cattle grazed in the distance. Their expanded cabin stood sturdy behind them, and inside slept their 2 children, healthy and loved. "You remember when we first met?" Emma asked, her head resting on Adam's shoulder. "How broken we both were." "I remember thinking I recognized something in you," Adam said. "That particular kind of loneliness that comes from losing everything." "We were drowning," Emma said. "Separately drowning, trying so hard to keep our heads above water that we could not see anything else. And now," she turned to look at him, her face peaceful in the fading light. "Now we are swimming, together, and teaching our children to swim too so they never have to drown the way we did." Adam kissed her forehead, overwhelmed with gratitude for this life they had built. "I love you," he said. "I love our family. I love what we have created together." "I love you too," Emma replied. "Thank you for being brave enough to choose me, to choose us. Thank you for choosing me back. For teaching me that surviving is not the same as living, and that it is okay to do both." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged, 2 people who had lost everything and found each other in the aftermath. The grief would always be part of them. They carried their lost families in every choice they made, every story they told their children. But it no longer defined them. They had grieved together and healed together, transforming their shared pain into shared strength. As the years continued, the Lawson family flourished. Thomas grew into a thoughtful boy who loved the ranch and showed early signs of his grandfather's way with horses. Sarah was spirited and curious, always asking questions and pushing boundaries in a way that reminded Adam of his mother. In 1885, Emma gave birth to their 3rd child, a son they named Daniel, just because they liked the name and felt he deserved one that was entirely his own, not weighted with memory. The ranch continued to expand, becoming one of the most successful in the region. Adam's reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle spread, bringing buyers from across Nevada and beyond. Emma managed the business side with sharp intelligence, investing their profits wisely, and ensuring they were never again vulnerable to the kind of desperation they had both known. But success did not change what mattered most: family. Every evening, no matter how busy the day had been, Adam and Emma gathered their children around the fire to share stories. They talked about the grandparents the children had never met, keeping those memories alive and honored. They also talked about the future, about the possibilities that lay ahead for children who grew up secure and loved. "Why did grandmother hide you in the cellar?" Thomas asked one evening when he was 8. Adam had been telling him about his mother's garden, and the question came out of nowhere, as children's questions often did. Adam exchanged a glance with Emma, who nodded encouragingly. They had agreed to be honest with their children, to teach them that life could be hard but that hardship could be overcome. "Because bad men came to our ranch," Adam said carefully, "and she wanted to keep me safe. It was the bravest thing she ever did, giving me a chance to survive." "Were you scared?" Thomas asked, his eyes wide. "Terrified," Adam admitted. "But I did what she told me, and it saved my life. Sometimes being brave means being scared but doing what you have to do anyway. Like how Mama was brave enough to leave Missouri even though she was alone." Sarah chimed in. She had heard the story of Emma's journey west dozens of times and never tired of it. "Exactly like that," Emma said, pulling her daughter close. "Being brave does not mean not being scared. It means deciding that something is worth the fear." "Like when Papa asked you to marry him," Thomas added, grinning. "He loved the story of his parents' courtship." "Yes," Adam said, smiling at Emma. "That was the scariest and bravest thing I have ever done, and the best decision I ever made." These conversations were important. Adam and Emma both knew. Their children needed to understand that their parents had survived terrible things, but more importantly, that survival was possible. That grief did not have to be the end of the story, that it could be the beginning of something else entirely. In 1887, White Pine celebrated its 20th anniversary as an incorporated town. The Lawsons attended the festivities with their 3 children, now 7, 5, and 2. Mr. Calhoun, now in his 60s, sought them out specifically. "You remember the day you two met?" he asked, his eyes twinkling. "In my store when Emma dropped that flower. I remember thinking Adam was either very kind or very foolish," Emma said, laughing. "Offering to pay for a stranger's purchases. I was both," Adam admitted. "Kind and foolish and completely out of my depth, but it was the best impulse I ever followed." "You two have built something remarkable," Mr. Calhoun said seriously. "Not just the ranch, though that is impressive. But you have built a family, a real family, out of loss and determination. That is what this town is all about, people starting over, making something from nothing. You embody that." His words stayed with Adam long after the celebration ended. It was true that they had built something remarkable, but it had not been easy or inevitable. It had required conscious choice, day after day, to keep choosing hope over despair, love over isolation, building over hiding. They had grieved together and healed together, but the healing was not a destination, it was an ongoing practice, a muscle they had to keep exercising. As their children grew older, Adam and Emma began to talk about what they wanted to leave behind. Not just the ranch, though that was important, but values and lessons. "I want them to know that loss is not the end," Emma said one night. "That you can survive the worst thing imaginable and still build a beautiful life. I want them to know they are strong enough to face hard things," Adam added, "but that they do not have to face them alone. That asking for help and accepting love is not weakness, it is wisdom. I want them to remember their grandparents," Emma continued. "Not as ghosts haunting us, but as real people who lived and loved and made us who we are. I want them to know they are loved," Adam said simply. "Every single day, without question or doubt, the way we should have been able to be loved by our parents if the world had been fair." They were both quiet for a moment, acknowledging the old pain that still surfaced sometimes. But it was different now, softer around the edges, integrated into who they were rather than defining them completely. "We did it," Emma said wonderingly. "We actually did it. We took our broken pieces and made something whole." "We are still doing it," Adam corrected gently. "Every day, we are still choosing to heal, to build, to love. That is the real victory, not that we survived, but that we decided surviving was not enough." The years rolled on, bringing changes and challenges, but also stability and joy. Thomas took over more responsibility on the ranch as he entered his teenage years, showing the same dedication his father had. Sarah developed a passion for reading and learning, reminding Emma of her own hunger for knowledge. Daniel was the family comedian, always finding ways to make everyone laugh even on difficult days. In 1890, Adam turned 30. It was a milestone that felt significant. He had now lived more years after his parents' deaths than before. He stood on his porch that morning, Emma beside him, and looked out at everything they had built. The ranch was prosperous and well managed. Their 3 children were healthy and happy. He and Emma had created a partnership built on mutual understanding and deep love. 30 years, Emma said, reading his thoughts as she often did. "You have packed a lot of living into 30 years. "We have," Adam corrected. "We have done this together." "Do you think your parents would be proud?" she asked, the question they had asked each other periodically over the years. "Yes," Adam said, and this time he believed it without reservation. "I think they would be amazed and proud." not just of the ranch, but of the fact that I survived and then chose to live fully, that I did not let their deaths be the only thing that defined me. My family, too, Emma said. My mother always said that the best revenge against bad fortune was to live well. I think we have done that. We have lived so well. That evening, they gathered their children and some close friends for a small celebration. As Adam looked around at the people filling his home with laughter and warmth, he felt a profound sense of completion. This was what he had been building toward all along, even when he had not known it, a life rich with connection and purpose. A family that would carry forward the best of what he and Emma had learned. Later, after everyone had gone home and the children were in bed, Adam and Emma stood together under the stars. The Nevada sky stretched overhead in its vast glory, the same sky that had witnessed their first meeting, their courtship, their marriage, and all the years since. "Do you ever wonder what our lives would have been like if we had not met?" Emma asked. "Sometimes," Adam admitted, "but I cannot imagine it very clearly. You are so woven into everything I am now that trying to picture life without you is like trying to imagine a world without sky." "We saved each other," Emma said. "I really believe that. Separately, we were drowning. Together, we learned to breathe again. And now we are teaching our children to breathe from the start," Adam added, "so they never have to know that particular kind of suffocation." "That is the real gift," Emma agreed. "Breaking the cycle of loss, showing them that safety and love are possible even in a world that can be cruel." They stood in comfortable silence, their hands clasped, their bodies close. Two people who had started as shattered fragments had slowly, painfully, wonderfully rebuilt themselves into something new. Not the people they would have been without tragedy, those versions were lost forever. But people who had chosen to transform their grief into compassion, their pain into purpose, their loss into love. The years continued to unfold. By 1895, Thomas was 17 and had grown into a fine young man with his father's steady temperament and his mother's quick intelligence. He had started courting a girl from town, much to his parents' delight. Sarah, at 15, was already talking about becoming a teacher, inspired by her love of learning. Daniel, at 10, was the heart of the family, keeping everyone laughing and connected. Adam and Emma, now in their mid-30s, had settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch ran smoothly, their children were thriving, and they had built a life that honored their past without being imprisoned by it. They still had hard days, anniversaries of deaths, moments when old grief would surge up unexpectedly, but they had learned to weather those storms together. One autumn evening in 1895, as they prepared for bed, Emma turned to Adam with a serious expression. "I have been thinking," she said, "about everything we have been through, everything we have built, and I want you to know that I am grateful. Not for the loss, I would never be grateful for that, but for what we created from it." "I know what you mean," Adam said, pulling her close. "I wish neither of us had suffered what we did. But I cannot regret the path that led me to you. We took the worst things that ever happened to us and refused to let them be the final word," Emma continued. "That feels important, like we won something back." "We did," Adam agreed. "We won back our right to be happy, to have a family, to build a future. Those things were stolen from us once, but we claimed them again. Our children will never have to fight that battle," Emma said. "They will grow up secure, knowing they are loved and safe." That is what healing looks like, breaking the cycle so the next generation can start from a different place. Adam kissed her forehead, overcome with love for this woman who had walked through fire and emerged strong enough to build an empire of love from the ashes. "You are the bravest person I have ever known," he said. "We are brave together," she corrected. "That is how we did it, not through individual strength but through shared determination." As they lay down to sleep that night, wrapped in each other's arms, Adam reflected on the improbable journey that had brought them here. From that day in the general store when a dropped sack of flour had led to a conversation, which had led to friendship, which had led to love, which had led to this, a full, rich life that honored the past while embracing the future. The nightmares still came occasionally, but less frequently now. And when they did, Adam and Emma would wake together, holding each other until the fear passed, reminding each other that they were safe, they were loved, they were home. In the spring of 1896, Thomas married his sweetheart, a gentle girl named Mary who fit into the Lawson family like she had always belonged. The wedding was held at the ranch, with the entire town in attendance. As Adam walked Thomas through the final preparations, he was struck by the beautiful symmetry of the moment. "Nervous?" he asked his son. "Terrified," Thomas admitted with a grin. "But Mama says being brave means doing things even when you are scared." "Your mother is wise," Adam said. "And she is right. Marriage is scary because you are giving someone the power to hurt you, but it is also the most rewarding thing you will ever do if you choose the right person." "The way you chose Mama," Thomas said. "It was not a question." "The way she chose me back," Adam corrected. "That is the key. It has to be mutual. You both have to keep choosing each other every day, even when it is hard." At the ceremony, Adam stood beside Emma, watching their eldest son pledge his life to another person. Emma was crying, but they were happy tears, the kind that came from witnessing beauty rather than experiencing pain. When Adam reached for her hand, she squeezed back, a wordless communication that had developed over 17 years of marriage. Later, at the reception, Mr. Calhoun raised a toast. "To Thomas and Mary," he said, "and to the example set by Thomas's parents, who have shown this whole town what it means to build a life with love and determination. May you be as happy as they have been." The words resonated through the crowd, people nodding in agreement. Adam and Emma had become something of a legend in White Pine, the two young people who had lost everything but had somehow built it all back, bigger and better than before. But they did not think of themselves as legends. They were just two people who had refused to let grief have the final word. As 1896 turned into 1897 and beyond, the Lawson family continued to grow and change. Thomas and Mary had their first child, making Adam and Emma grandparents at 37. Holding that baby, another Thomas, named for his father and great-uncle Adam, felt the beautiful continuity of it. The names they had chosen to honor their lost families were being carried forward, living on in children who would know safety and love from their first breath. Sarah left for San Francisco in 1898 to attend a teaching college, a decision that was both proud and painful for her parents. Watching her board the stage, Emma cried in a way she had not in years. "She will be fine," Adam reassured her, though his own throat was tight. "We raised her to be strong and independent." "I know," Emma said, "but letting her go is hard. It brings back all those feelings of loss, even though I know this is different. This is her choosing to leave, not having her ripped away." "That is how we know we did it right," Adam said. "She feels secure enough to leave because she knows she can always come home. We gave her roots and wings." The distinction mattered. Their children were leaving by choice to pursue their dreams, knowing they had a family to return to. That was healing made manifest, breaking the cycle of forced separation, and creating instead a foundation solid enough to launch from. Daniel followed his own path, developing a talent for working with wood. By 1900, at 15, he was crafting furniture that people came from miles around to purchase. Adam built him a workshop on the ranch, watching with pride as his youngest child developed a skill that was entirely his own, not inherited or expected but discovered. "You never pushed us to be ranchers," Daniel observed one day as they worked together on a particularly intricate chair. "Why not? This is your legacy." "My legacy is not the ranch," Adam said. "It is you three. Your mother and I wanted to give you what we did not have the freedom to discover who you are and what you love. The ranch is just land and cattle. You are what matters." "That is what makes you a good father," Daniel said simply. Knowing the difference, the words stayed with Adam. He and Emma had worked so hard to be the parents they had lost too soon, to give their children the kind of love and support that had been stolen from them. Hearing that they had succeeded felt like the ultimate validation. In 1902, Emma turned 40. It was another milestone, another marker of just how far they had come. She and Adam sat on their porch that evening, watching the sunset as they had countless times before. 40 years, Emma mused. 22 of them without my family, more than half my life. Does it get easier? Adam asked, even though he already knew the answer. Yes and no, Emma replied. The sharp edges have worn down. I can think about them without feeling like I am being torn apart. But I still miss them. I still wonder what my mother would think of our grandchildren, what my father would say about the ranch, how Thomas would have turned out. I think about my parents the same way, Adam admitted. Especially when our children hit milestones. I wish they could see what we built. Maybe they can, Emma said. I am not sure I believe in heaven or anything like that, but I like to think that love does not just disappear, that somehow they know. Whether they know or not, we have honored them, Adam said, by surviving, by building, by raising children who know they are loved. That feels like the best tribute we could offer. Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, the gesture so familiar after 23 years of marriage that it felt like breathing. We did good, she said softly. Despite everything, we did so good. We did, Adam agreed. And we are not done yet. We have grandchildren to spoil and more life to live. This is not an ending, it is just another chapter. And so it was. The years continued, bringing more changes and more joy. Thomas and Mary had 3 children. Sarah returned from San Francisco as a certified teacher and started a school in White Pine. And Daniel married a girl he met at a furniture exposition in Carson City. The ranch passed gradually into Thomas's capable hands as Adam and Emma eased into semi-retirement, spending more time with their grandchildren and less time managing daily operations. In 1908, on their 29th wedding anniversary, Adam and Emma rode out to the place where they had first admitted their feelings for each other, the stream where they had sat and talked about learning to carry grief differently. They were both in their late 40s now, their hair showing threads of silver, their faces lined with years of hard work and laughter. You remember what you said to me here? Emma asked, trailing her hand in the cool water. About grief being a testament rather than a curse. I remember, Adam said. Do you still believe it? More than ever, Emma replied. Everything we have built, everything we have become, it is all because we refused to let loss define us. We transformed it into something else. That feels like the truest form of healing. We grieved together, Adam said, echoing the thought that had sustained them through so many hard years. And then we healed together, not separately, not alone, but side by side. That made all the difference, Emma agreed. I do not think I could have done it alone. But with you, it became possible. More than possible, it became beautiful. They sat in peaceful silence, 2 people who had walked through the valley of death and emerged on the other side, scarred but whole. The stream burbled over its stones, indifferent to human pain and human triumph alike. But Adam and Emma had learned that nature's indifference was not cruelty, it was simply the backdrop against which they got to choose how to live. As the sun set, and they rode back to the ranch, Adam felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had lost his family young, Emma had lost hers younger, and the world had seemed determined to crush them both. But they had found each other and had built something that loss could not touch. They had created a family, a legacy, a life full of love and meaning. Their story was not one of tragedy overcome so much as tragedy integrated. The losses were still there, would always be there, but they existed alongside joy and love and hope. Adam and Emma had learned that healing did not mean forgetting or moving on. It meant making room for new happiness, while honoring old pain. As they reached the ranch and were greeted by the sounds of their grandchildren playing, their grown children calling out welcomes, Adam turned to Emma one more time. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" she asked, though she was smiling. "For being brave enough to choose me. For teaching me that surviving is not the same as living. For building this life with me." "Thank you for the same," Emma replied, reaching up to touch his face. "We saved each other, Adam. That is what love does. It saves us from drowning in our own grief." They dismounted and walked into their home, surrounded by the family they had created together, the legacy they would leave behind. Two people who had lost everything had found each other and had built an empire of love from ashes and determination. They had grieved together and healed together, and in doing so had discovered that the human heart was far more resilient than anyone might believe. Their story was complete, not because there would be no more challenges or sorrows, but because they had learned the essential truth: that love, chosen deliberately and nurtured carefully, could transform even the deepest wounds into sources of strength. The Lawson family would continue for generations, each one carrying forward the lesson that Adam and Emma had learned together in the hard Nevada landscape: that healing is possible, that love is worth the risk, and that the bravest thing anyone can do is choose hope over despair, building over hiding, together over alone.